Regardless of industry or even size, almost every single business goes through these same phases. And in each phase, there are predictable patterns. And I know entrepreneurs feel like it's like a new thing, or you don't understand what I'm going through, or my business is unique. It's not. So you've got phases, predictable patterns, and then you hit these invisible ceilings. And that invisible ceiling, it requires a mindset shift and a behavioral change to break through to the next level. And then guess what? New phase, new predictable patterns, new invisible ceiling, different breakthroughs. And there's about 5 very common, very predictable stages of business. So once you have that purview and can look at things systemically like that, it just changes everything. So now, starting a brand new business, I'm like, I know exactly what needs to happen in what phase and where my bottlenecks and my issues are going to be. It doesn't mean I'm going to make every right decision, but I have a higher batting average because of it.
Welcome back, you magnificent strategists. You relentless entrepreneurs to Whiskey is for Closers. This is the podcast where we believe business growth isn't just about working hard, it's about working smart. And sometimes the smartest thing you can do is have a damn good drink in your hand. That's right, because let's be honest, most founders didn't wake up dreaming of becoming their own HR department. But when the business starts humming, the real work of scaling begins. So grab your favorite poison, settle in, and get ready to hear from a founder who's not only built empires, but also has figured out how you can build the dream team without breaking the bank. Today, we're talking to the innovator of Growth Concierge, who is basically turning the hiring model on its head. Andrea, welcome to Whiskey is for Closer.
Hey guys, such a pleasure to be here. I love it. I'm excited.
Yes. Okay. I mean, we got to start with our title, right? What is everybody drinking today? Who wants to go first?
You know what? I'm going to go first because I'm probably drinking the most slumdog drink of the group today. Because I'm slumming today, because I'm always, busting out my good stuff. But today I brought Evan Williams Single Barrel, which is like a $30 bottle of whiskey. But man, it's good. It's really good. It's a solid whiskey for the price. And I've kind of started going on this little quest for sub $50 bottles of bourbon that are actually good. And that's one of them right there for sure. So that's mine. Evan Williams, baby.
Love it. Evan Williams for the win.
Evan Williams for the win.
Drew, Mr. King Snake.
King Snake.
Yes, Mr. King Snake is up. You're welcome. And I think one of these days we're going to talk about where did this come from? And we're going to have to find out who listens to our podcasts to be able to know when that was. So we'll make that a little surprise. But for today,
what are you talking about, man?
Well, okay. So, when we named myself, I named myself.
You named
Mr.
yourself.
King Snake.
Yes.
Well,
just be clear.
There's a genesis to that, right? It happened on a particular podcast. And I think it would be really good to see if one day somebody knows what podcast that was. And maybe we do a little trivia to see. And maybe I'll send them a bottle of bourbon if they can figure out which one of those.
Which episode Mr. King
created.
Snake.
So,
yeah, okay.
Okay, I'm going to go next because today's a special one, and it's special because Mr. Craig Johnson got me a little gift, and this gift is a Woodford Reserve, specifically Derby, and this one is Derby 152, and Derby 152 happens next month.
First weekend of May. Yeah.
Yeah. So it is coming up in just a couple of weeks. So today is the first day we cracked open the Woodford Reserve, and I am enjoying that. Andrea, just so you know, you are special because I don't just open that for just anybody. You're amazing. Let's rock and roll.
You had to bring your A game for Andrea.
And so every year I get the Derby release of Woodford. That's like a thing that I do ever since I lived in Louisville. I love Derby season. My wife really loves Derby season. So Andrea, I stepped it up today. This is the first time I've actually made a mixed drink for one of our episodes. So I made a just a standard old fashioned, but I did it with Woodford Reserve, the Derby release for this year. And my wife got me Woodford infused cherries. So I added a couple of those in there as well. So that, I mean, I had to go with that. So I kind of am with Drew, but I took it up a notch.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, you
At
did.
some
Way to
point,
go.
I'll have to make you guys my famous old fashioned because
Yes.
every time I make
Okay.
it for anybody, they're like, it's the best I've ever had. And I'm not even going to tell you
Yes.
everything that's in it, but I will tell you it's got black walnut bitters in it, as
Mm,
well as Angostura, and of course, filthy cherry. There's some other fun stuff in there, maybe some maple syrup instead of sugar.
Let's
Anyway,
go.
yeah,
nah.
yeah,
Nice.
yeah. Well, thanks for your Derby contributions today, guys. Sorry, other people got the memo on the Derby stuff, and I didn't. I feel like I'm boring today. So I am drinking the tried and true. I'm having Blanton's,
Well, there you
and
That's
go.
great.
the reason I'm having it because this bottle was full on Easter,
Somebody's
and
been having fun.
it wasn't me. So, because I hosted Easter and I was cooking and doing all the stuff, everybody's
Yeah.
sitting around having bourbon. And I noticed my dad, my brothers, everybody's sipping on bourbon. And I casually said, "Which one are you drinking?" And one brother said, "Blanton's." I was like, "Okay." Another one said, "Blanton's." I was like, "Really?" So, I mean, I probably have 60 bottles of stuff. You know, we're big bourbon drinkers here and I have wine and everything else. And for some reason, that was like hit of the day. And so I went in and looked today. I was like, what am I going to have? And I was like, oh my gosh, if I don't drink this, it's going to be gone. So I decided we're going to do Blanton's. Damn
They
it.
crushed your Blantons. Well,
I
hey,
love it.
you stuck with the horse theme though, Andrea.
I
You
did.
know,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
mine actually is on the bottle. So there.
Totally.
So you did good. I was actually, Andrea, I wanted to bring out the Penelope because you turned me on to that, remember, some time ago, but
Blue
it's
bottle or
gone.
the white?
The
Because
black one, the
yeah,
black
the black one.
bottle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the one I pre-gamed with a little bit today was Penelope. I love
I need
Penelope.
to know this Penelope. I've never heard of Penelope before.
Yeah. Yeah. You'll
It's
have a big
good.
crush on her for sure.
Of course. I already do, and I don't even know her.
True.
That's so good.
Man, that's good stuff, man. Well, Andrea, are you ready for this?
I think so.
I think you
Strap
are.
in.
I think you are. So one of the things we were talking before we started recording about the unique opportunity that we had to actually spend time with you just a couple weeks ago. We were all together in Canton, Georgia, in a cool little co-working place there. And we had a meeting scheduled with you to talk about some collaboration between our companies. And it turned into a really unique opportunity to hear your story, your entrepreneurial journey, and then to actually see you do some work for us that you do for others through Growth Concierge. So I want to get to the Growth Concierge thing for sure. But the entrepreneurial journey that you shared was so amazing. I'd love it if you would if you'd go there again for our listeners, because there's so much gold there. And so how do you feel about that?
I'm happy to do it. There's a lot. You know, I feel like we could make a Lifetime movie or something out of all the ups and downs. So I feel like I'm totally game, but it might be opening Pandora's box a little bit. So I'm happy to tiptoe through the tulips. And if you want any more information, be like, stop there for a second because there's a lot.
It's
Yeah,
good.
there
We
you
It's
go.
like
good.
Pandora and we like the box, so let's go.
Okay. Okay. Well, I guess the easiest way is to say that I have been an entrepreneur since I was a little girl, right? So I remember selling my toys that I didn't like anymore or care about to neighborhood kids or like bartering for other stuff. And I definitely sold candy at school. And, you know, I'm not the only one that's done stuff like that. So I have been a salesperson and naturally looking for opportunities pretty much my whole life. I also have a pretty interesting track record of promising that I can do things before I have any clue how I'm going to actually figure it out and do it. And that's actually worked out pretty well for me so far, but I do have a few like kind of funny or embarrassing stories about that. But when I started businesses when I was young, I had no idea what I was doing because I not only came from nothing, but I had no good mentors in any area of my life. And I'm not trying to like sing a sad song here, but I didn't have any good mentors when it came to marriage or to health. I didn't have any good mentors when it came for sure to business or career. Everyone around me was broke minded with a scarcity mindset. It was read the menu right to left to figure out what you were going to have for dinner. If we even were privileged enough to go out to eat ever, it was just tough. Everything was tough growing up. And I've been on my own since I was about 13. And so when you're young and you're kind of out in the marketplace trying to hustle and figure it all out, that's when you make a lot of mistakes. But when you're young, you're so eager and so resilient. And so that's what happened. And so I kept creating businesses out of either a brilliant idea that I thought I had in my own head or an opportunity that presented itself. And I just jumped because I was looking for whatever that next thing was that I can latch onto. So now you mentioned Growth Concierge is my 22nd company. And I would say out of those 22, about half of those were failures or learning lessons.
Yeah, there you go.
Some of them were sneaky failures because I would have some success and then I would bang my chest and get all proud of myself. Like, look what I did. And then something would happen and it would fall apart, or what I thought was a success was a moment, or what I thought was going to become our client base was maybe a lucky break or something. And so what then happened was I just did it wrong so many possible ways and paid attention that I started tracking like that worked, that didn't. Oh, that almost worked, that didn't. And so then I started having more consistent success. I wasn't breaking any records or anything, but I was having more consistency. And then I had a couple of pretty good hits, right? Up to bat, right? I had a couple of home runs. And the problem was I didn't really know how I'd done it. And I didn't want to admit that because you get all the atta babies. And I was like, yeah, I don't think I could do it again because I don't really know how that happened. And this is about the time of life when I met some mentors who were 25, 30 years my senior. They used to call me kiddo, which I absolutely...
How old were you at this point, Andrea?
Oh, gosh. First set of mentors was in my mid 30s. Second set of mentors was like 41, 42.
So those businesses you were just talking about that where you had the failures and stuff, that was all happening in your 20s and maybe early 30s?
I mean, I started my first business when I was 16. So my first actual business. And that was successful until it wasn't. Just everything had a season or had things that worked and didn't. And some of these businesses overlapped each other and then got coalesced and fell apart and whatever. But then I started finding the consistent success. And when I was in my 30s, I got those big hits, some of those big wins. And it was primarily in the technology sector. And the good thing is it was custom software and mobile apps and mobile technology and proximity marketing and stuff. It was the right time, baby. If I could just figure it out and hang on, it was the Wild West back then. And I was the only female that I knew in high tech pretty much anywhere I went, in any room I was ever in. So that made for a complication as well. But I didn't really start getting some of those big wins until, I was in my 30s. And then when I met some of these mentors, they showed me levels of business, this like 3-dimensional chess that I did not even know existed. And it opened my little baby eyes to all this stuff that I hadn't even realized. And then not only did I find more consistent success across different industries and different companies that I owned, but that's when I started doing more advisory work and whatever. And I started seeing patterns and it hit me all of a sudden. I realized, wait a minute. Regardless of industry or even size, almost every single business goes through these same phases. And in each phase, there are predictable patterns. And I know entrepreneurs feel like it's like a new thing, or you don't understand what I'm going through, or my business is unique. No, it's not. So you've got phases, predictable patterns, and then you hit these invisible ceilings. And that invisible ceiling, it requires a mindset shift and a behavioral change to break through to the next level. And then guess what? New phase, new predictable patterns, new invisible ceiling, different breakthroughs. And there's about 5 very common, very predictable stages of business. So once you have that purview and can look at things systemically like that, it just changes everything. So now starting a brand new business, I'm like, I know exactly what needs to happen in what phase and where my bottlenecks and my issues are going to be. Doesn't mean I'm going to make every right decision, but I have a higher batting average because of it.
Yeah. Andrea, I'd love for you to talk a little bit more about the mindset. And I know we'll get to some of that here in a little bit, But there was one thing that you shared with us a couple weeks ago, and it was, as you're developing different tech companies, you would say, yeah, yep, we can do that, when you really didn't have the solution fully baked yet. And I think that speaks to part of your mindset and hustle and belief that we can figure this out. I am a problem solver and I can figure out how to solve this problem. Talk about what was going, maybe situationally, what was going through your mind that made you jump out and say yes? What was it within your mindset that was like, yeah, we can figure that out? And how did you start to identify that through your journey as well? When you talk about like patterns, right?
The first time that happened in a really meaningful way, I had started an online virtual concierge service. Doesn't even matter what it was. It never went anywhere. It was just an idea in my head, and I paid some HP developers to build it out, and it never did anything. But while I was trying to sell that and sponsorship and trying to pull that ecosystem together, I was in front of luxury brands. And every time I would talk to luxury brands, they would say, yeah, that sounds great, but we have this other problem over here that we need fixed first. Can you fix that? And I would say, of course we can fix that. And then I would run back to this group and go, please tell me you can fix this. Like, I have no idea. And so
Let's
the
go,
biggest one,
salespeople.
this was the biggest one of those like leaps of faith I ever took. I was in front of Ferrari, Maserati, and which I'm a big car girl, if y'all know, I love cars. Anyway, so I was in front of Ferrari, Maserati, and I was talking to them about something else. And I said, imagine if you could send a text message that said, good morning, Jonathan. Click here to see the new Ferrari F-150 that's going to be released in November. Here's a sneak peek preview. You click the link, you watch a little video of it zooming around the track, and you schedule a test drive or something. And they went, whoa, 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 stop. Are you trying to tell me you can actually send a text message that says, good morning, Jonathan? That's all they heard. And in my mind, I was like, I mean, I'm sure we can. I'm sure we can figure that out because
How hard could that be?
I'd owned an on-demand digital book printing company that used a lot of variable data. So I was like, how hard can it be? So I was like, you bet. Absolutely. When I told my guys, like, we need basically dynamic variable data SMS, they were like, what? Like, that does not exist. Like, we're not a carrier. We can't do that. And I was like, you better figure it out. It was my first 6-figure deal I'd ever sold. And I was like,
Good.
do it, figure it out. Guess what? We did. So we created dynamic texting, which is insane. I wish I had the royalties from that, but I
No
I
kidding.
didn't have the money back then to even try to patent anything like that. And plus,
Sure.
good luck trying to fight the big boys. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So that was the first foray into, of course we can do it. No idea how. And
Yeah.
that was a big leap. That was a big one.
When you look at the different types of companies that you've started or been a part of, you mentioned earlier stuff that happens to you and stuff that you're creating in a sense. This felt like one of those something that happened to you moments. How many of those have been breakthrough moments versus things that you've created and tried to force into the market?
I've tried to force a lot. It hasn't always gone well.
That might not be
What
the
I-
right way to frame it, but I think you know what I'm
No,
kind of
that's
trying to get at.
exactly the way to frame it. Because a lot of founder CEOs come up with an idea in the shower and they're like, everybody needs this. This is a $1 billion idea. How many times have we heard this, right? And they, in a vacuum, make an assumption that everybody needs this. They're all going to buy it. It's going to solve all these problems. And without doing any market research or any kind of customer feedback or anything, they'll go and spend sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars to build out prototypes or build things that nobody ever said they wanted. So that is definitely a common theme, which I would consider to be forcing an agenda versus spotting a gap or an opportunity and jumping on it. So I would say my biggest inflection points, my hockey sticks, were when I had an agenda. I had something that put me in the room of why I was there and what I was trying to sell them or what deal I was trying to make. And then boom, they said, hey, by the way, we have this other thing. And I went, I got you. I had no idea how I was going to do that. But those were the moments when big things happen. So I think you have to have
Yeah.
both. If you're so myopic that you're only
Good.
trying to sell your thing, you're not going to be open to those.
That's super good.
Yeah, that's the where the adaptability piece comes in, right? I feel like in a lot of ways we've been on that journey at Alteza because we started with this idea that, hey, there's a bunch of businesses out there that need really good salespeople, but they can't afford them. So let's do it fractionally. And that's where we began. But as we sit here 5 years later, what we offer is much different and getting more and more different all the time because it's what you said. Like if you're listening, you're learning and you're paying attention, you see these other opportunities. And then you go, "Oh, that's where we need to go." So I love that. I want to come back to mindset, Andrea. You were talking about and I love your spirit of I'm going to go sell it and we'll figure out how to deliver it. Cause I've been a part of a lot of companies that did that. And I was that guy, out there, but I've also seen, I've talked to founders who have a company, an organization that's big enough where they've got some people behind them in the operations seat and then the development seat and whatnot who don't have that same mindset of we can figure this out. And so they have the big idea. They go out there, they have a conversation, they come back and go, I just sold this. This is amazing. Let's do it. And everybody just kind of throws cold water on it. Have you had that experience? How do you navigate that when you've got a team that isn't coming along with the vision that you have? And what do you do with that? Because I feel like that happens a lot.
I want to reframe the question if I can, because
Yeah.
you're saying what
Not
happens
allowed.
when the founder says like a founder-led sales. Okay, so let's go.
Yeah.
Founder-led sales, they go out, they're hustling, they grab some kind of an idea, an opportunity, and they come back. And for a month, they've been telling their team, we're marching to this drum beat in this direction. They come back from this meeting and they're like, never mind, we're all going this way, we're doing this.
Yeah.
There's only so much you can whiplash your team before.
Yeah.
So
stop.
I will reframe that a little bit to say, as long as the founder is exceptionally clear, which is very rare, is exceptionally clear on what they want, where they're headed. Like here, the difference is we're going to take that hill and I want that hill taken by next Tuesday. How we get there, don't care. But the objective is to take the hill. Now, when you come back and say, hey, instead of go around the left side, I got some intel. I think maybe we could cut through the shortcut. You're still ultimately taking them to the same place.
Same hill.
If it's a total misdirection and now you guys are selling something else or you're going in a different direction, you're going to lose a lot of really good A players because they can't handle that whiplash.
Yeah.
So I don't think most founders, especially founder-led sales companies under 5 million, have that kind of discipline because revenue is so important that they say
That's
yes
good.
to opportunities they never should say yes to. And they say yes to opportunities with not right fit clients, like people that are jerks or that are going to run you ragged, or they'll do it, but only on their special terms. And when you're in a desperate mindset, you're like, okay, well, the problem with that is you can't build systems when everything is an exception.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So that's the
That's great.
reframe, is as long as you know where you're headed and you can keep your tribe aiming toward the same goal, switching paths is acceptable, switching targets is not.
Those are two tweetable comments you just made right there, girl.
So
Really good.
Okay, Andrea, earlier you made this offhanded comment that you could make a Lifetime movie out of some of your experiences. And after hearing some of them, that is not a overreach and that is not a exaggerated statement that you made. And I remember one of those particular ones that you shared with me. You have gone through some intense moments, partners turning on you, rebuilding from scratch, even clients waiting months to come back to you because of the reason why you had to separate at one point. So looking back, talk us through, what did those experiences teach you about control? What did it teach you about being an owner and protecting what you built?
Okay, those are all really big questions, like piled into one.
You're welcome.
The first thing I
he
would
has
say
been
is,
drinking.
Aren't you
so-
glad you're drinking, Andrea?
I know, it's a good thing I'm on my second glass. So first thing is, when I was a young entrepreneur, I knew I didn't know vastly more than I did know. So I knew the ratio was not in my favor. And therefore, I wasn't very good at discerning who to trust, because I assumed everybody was better and smarter than me. And especially because I was very young in most rooms that I was in, Not only was I green, but I was young. That hurt me, I think, because I trusted people that had not earned that
Mm.
trust. And one example that I didn't share with you, I was rocking a particular tech company. We were crushing it and we were like quadrupling in size every year and all this stuff was going on. And I ended up thinking that I wanted to raise capital. I had no idea how to do that. And so I met somebody who, if you looked at this person's bio, you would say, dang, they are overqualified and big name brands behind companies that they had been a CFO of and things that they had done. And I thought, oh, I'm so lucky. I've got this person interested in helping little old me. Well, they ended up grabbing all of our books and all of our financials and everything in order to do the investor one pagers and all the stuff. And I thought, well, I don't know anything about all that stuff. So here you go. Just let me know how it goes. And I turned over all my stuff to this individual who proceeded to try to steal the company out from under me. And I only found out by a fluke. I almost lost the company because it's just a weird way that I found out. And I grabbed a hold of what was left. It was like I just got the hairs or the tail and jerked my company back. And I was able to save it with some damage. But because of that bad experience, I made a judgment call that I'm never raising money again. I'm never doing that again. Well, it wasn't the idea of raising money. It was the wrong person. And so I actually shot myself in the foot, the whole once bitten, twice shy, because out of those 22 companies, guess how many I actually raised outside capital for? Any guess?
The 22?
Out of 22 companies, how many did I have outside investors in?
Half.
Zero.
Half of them.
It's a good guess. The answer is zero.
That's what I said. Zero.
Zero. Yeah. Oh, I was
Yeah.
listening to Mr. Kingsnake down there.
Yeah.
So
He's hard. He's hard.
what? So what happened was my injury, my scars from that prevented me from making smart moves later on when it would have been more appropriate. So that's an example of like, what did I learn? But I didn't learn that until too far down the road when I had that higher purview and went, oh man, I'd be in a very different spot if I'd raised some money here and there along the way and done things. But then I also wanted to maintain a tighter control. And that's great until you want to scale. And so I had to force myself to still be able to maintain the controls over things like direction, vision, culture, and our end goals, but then relinquish some of that control on the how it got done. And then bring in people, I could punch way above my weight, people that were way smarter and better than me at certain areas of the business. But I still poked my head in a lot more often than just, here you go. It was more oversight. So those are a couple of big lessons from that.
So you feel like the lesson wasn't so much about I need to have better judgment about people, but I need to stay more involved in the process.
It was don't outsource critical functions of your business to strangers
Well, and
because you don't know what you're doing.
It's tempting to do that, right? Especially if it's an area of the business that maybe you don't really care for or like anyway, right? It's like, let somebody else take that. I don't really like it anyway. So, yeah.
Yep. And
I
as
can see.
an entrepreneur, you better figure it out. You may
Yeah.
not be great at doing your P&Ls and your finance and your forecasting, but you at least need to have a base knowledge of how to do all that and keep track and check. You
Yeah.
need to have oversight. And so I was forced to learn all of that stuff that I had no interest in learning. And it's a really good thing that I
Wow. Wow. I know we kind of touched on mindset earlier, but we understand that you are a certified hypnotherapist and you've trained in NLP and relational dynamics. How has that impacted your success?
So in early days, I kept those two parts of my life very separate. So
Why is that?
because I just thought the relational dynamics and the NLP and stuff, I mean, I used to see clients, like I did it professionally, but I always thought it was just a passion. And then it was like, but what about my day job? And so I would start companies and do things over here, but I thought, what does one have to do with the other? And I always had a very strong code of ethics to not use these Jedi powers on somebody without permission or, whatever. And so I just kept them very separate until I was in a meeting with Coca-Cola. Actually, we were doing a lot of work with behind their agency of record, and we had done a ton of work with them. So I felt pretty bold because I knew we were in good standing with them, and they wanted us to build a mobile app for March Madness, Final Four for the Georgia Dome. And technologically speaking, it would have been a disaster because they're just the connectivity and the bandwidth, and it had like 72 features. It just was not going to work. It was really heavy and chunky. But behaviorally speaking, if you think about a mobile device in the hands of a 9-year-old girl, it looks nothing like the same aperture in the hands of a 72-year-old man. They might as well be called different pieces of technology because of how they use them. And so I realized that the behavioral aspect was going to tank the project even worse than the tech. And
Wow.
it came out in this kind of heated meeting with them where they wanted us to reply to an RFP that I didn't want to because I knew it was going to fail. And I slid it back across the table and I told them, we're not going to do this for you because it's going to fail. And this is why. Bada boom, boom, boom. And they're not used to being told no. So like all the blood drained out of their face and they got really pissed, honestly. And they got up and left the room. And I'll never forget my good friend Chris, who was SVP there. He was at the agency. He just sat there and he goes, well, that just happened. But it was the right moment because they hired another company, a guy that I knew out of Midtown who did it or tried to do it and failed. And a year and a half later, his boutique firm went out of business, probably because they jerked him around on terms or it didn't meet specs or whatever, because it couldn't. And so it wasn't about being right. It was about a year later when they came back and wanted to talk about X Games or something else we were doing with them. They were like, so what were we talking about with that whole behavioral thing? And it was like, now you want to talk about that. Well, now it's not free. And from that moment on, guys, I never did another RFP in my entire career because I realized that the secret sauce was in my ability to marry really cool technology with how people were going to behave with it and within it and through it.
Wow.
So that blending didn't happen until I got cornered. I kind of got put up against a wall and said no, and that changed the whole rest of my career. Now it's in everything we do.
Wow. Wow.
That's really cool. What a great story. I mean, we talk all the time when we talk about sales about the importance of selling to the right customer, to the right fit, and what a great example of that, right? You were strong enough to say no in a situation where it probably was kind of scary to do that, and then ended up paying off for you big time, which is a lot of times how that works, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. So I want to go back to a moment that we experienced with you a couple weeks ago, like we were talking about in Canton. And this can be a springboard into the story behind Growth Concierge, because I want you to share that. But we at Alteza, we have you were talking about those stages that a company goes through, and then you hit this plateau, and we are there still. And so I said, Andrea, can you, we're going to be in a room, we're going to be trying to hash through this and figure out where we go from here, because we're in what I was referring to as the white water, which is actually comes out of a book called Predictable Success. And so I said, I would really value you kind of coming in and helping us navigate that. What was really cool is you came in and you came in with the impression that the company was at a different stage revenue-wise than we are. And you sat down and you said, you guys are at this level, right? And we said, no, we're really here. And you were like, I remember very distinctly, you just put your hands down on the table and you went, I know exactly what's going on here.
And then you schooled us.
Then
and
you
we're just like,
freaking
this, and this.
Yeah, and then you described it absolutely like you literally have been in our leadership team meetings for the last, so that, what an illustration of what you were talking about earlier, where you just see these patterns that just recur and recur and recur, right, at these different stages. So we got to experience that. And first of all, many, many thanks to you for being there. I think that was a divine moment that we had together at a perfect time. So thank you for that. But talk about that now. Let that be a springboard into what you're doing at Growth Concierge.
Yeah. So I mentioned I never really had any mentors until I hit some success and somehow got on their radar, and they just, by the grace of God, decided that I was their kiddo that they were going to help.
Kiddo.
And I always said, I want to be that for someone else. But I knew that I wasn't a very good coach because I'm not very patient. So I didn't really want to do like one-on-one coaching. Plus, that would go against my own model, which is building companies that can run without you. That doesn't work if you're coaching or even doing a lot of business advisory, which I had also done. But because of these predictable patterns, and I still have a heart for wanting to help and really see smart, great people like you guys that have a really strong team as well as a strong idea succeed. And if I can shave off decades of my trial and error and get you there faster, then we all win. That makes me so happy. So I realize that there's systems that need to be put into place that companies can't afford. They just flat out can't afford it. Because what you hear nowadays is a lot of consulting or fractional help. And sadly, what usually happens is they try to diagnose the fractional help that they think they need, and they may be wrong. They're usually wrong.
Yeah.
Because the first thing they think they need is usually more qualified leads. And then the second thing is, I just can't find good people. I need better salespeople. I can't find anybody that wants to work. Right. Those two things may have some element of truth, but I'm going to guarantee that's not the root cause or the problem, but they can't see it. And if they go out and hire even, let's say, a fractional CFO, there is a very big difference in a person who got laid off from a large corporation and they're hunting for their next job. So they're just going to do a little fractional work on the side. Meanwhile, they're job hunting on your dime and they're a corporate minded, probably not even a CFO. That's generous, but they'll take that title all day long because nobody's
Yeah.
checking. So the problem with that is it's not an entrepreneurial CFO. They're more of an accountant. They're going to come in and make sure you're not audited or, things are buttoned up. They're going to tighten everything down and they're risk averse. Well, when you're trying to grow a company, you need a CFO who's thinking about how do I leverage things like terms and lines of credit. And it's a very different person. And it's a third different person if you're actually trying to raise capital. So there's like three different versions of a CFO. And you'll ask a poor business owner, entrepreneur, they go, I don't know. I just need somebody to help me with my books. And they don't know how to go find the fractional expert that they need. And the problem that I also see when they just onesie twosie do this is they'll hire, say, a fractional CMO because they all think it's marketing. And that CMO, by no fault of their own, will come in and clean up their area of the garage and make it all spick and span by taking all the junk and the clutter and putting it in the rest of the house. It's like, well, yeah, your area of the garage looks great, but we have a bigger mess over here. And nobody's talking to anyone else. And if you're really wanting to grow holistically in a way that's stable and profitable and sustainable, you must look at all these areas together. It like works like a little kudzu, right? So what I realized that they needed, they wouldn't be able to afford. They needed a dream team to come in and look at all areas of the business, come up with a cohesive plan, and chronologically run that plan, implement, because I don't know a single CEO that needs another thing on their to-do list. They've got plenty on their to-do list. What they need is implementation. They need people to do the work. So that was like expensive. I thought they need 7-figure people and they need like 5 of them. How's that going to work? So on a plane on my way back from a CEO summit that I went to where I kept hearing this over and over again, I went, wait a minute, what if we did a fractional membership model? So that way they get their own chief growth officer, who all of our chief growth officers are outstanding. And all of our CXOs, including our CGOs, have owned their own companies. Yeah.
Talk about the differentiation of what a chief growth officer is and does within your model, because I think that's unique.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the chief growth officer is going to act like quarterback or maestro, or pick your metaphor. They will come in and do an assessment of all the different areas of business. They'll figure out exactly where you are. And it's amazing how many entrepreneurs think they're here, but they're not. They're really in a different spot realistically, and the State of the Union is not where they think. Where they're trying to go, especially if they have an exit in mind. If they're saying, I want to retire in the next 3 to 5 years, or I want to hand this over to my son, or whatever the situation, they have a strong ability to come in and look and assess everything clean, meaning there's no biases. They don't, have any dog in that fight. And their ability to figure out what bottlenecks and ceilings and issues are there and how to break through is so clean and easy. They will know exactly which different CXOs they need to bring in when. Our kind of base level, because we have different levels of membership, is just a chief growth officer. And I say just, I mean, 2 hours with these folks, they'll change your whole thing, But that you still need someone to help implement. So our next level up is what we call our plus one. It's so funny how it's become nicknamed our plus one. So it's your chief growth officer plus one CXO at a time. So maybe you start with finance, and then once you clean that up, then you bring in ops, then you bring in tech, then marketing, and then sales. It's pretty common path. But whatever it is, you're going to have who you need. But then I rolled 4 of my companies up underneath this one. So there's the support staff, 80 to 100 people to actually do the work that nobody wants to do, the research, the copywriting, redesign the website for the 3rd time because Chat GPT doesn't crawl it now, and all the stuff, right? And people that are doing social media and keeping track of AI and blah, blah, blah. So you get all of that support staff up underneath this firepower of these guys. And then we do have a rapid growth plan. It's rare. Not everybody needs it. If somebody says, look, I want to 5 or 10x this thing in the next 3 to 5 years and eject, I want to sell, I want to go spend time with my family, they have a have to. So we bring in an entire team of C-level operators, and all of our fractional experts have started, grown, and sold companies for hundreds of millions of dollars. These are not people job hunting, and these are not corporate guys. These are entrepreneurs. So they know what it feels like at those stages, and they understand the identity shift that has to happen between phases, because that's a really sad thing. I've had it happen too, where it's like, wait, I built this thing and now it doesn't need me. Well, then who am I? There's a weird identity shift that happens once you break through to those next levels and you actually build a business that allows you to be in the Dominican Republic, while it's running very healthily. That sounds great until you're that founder that now feels like, wait, you don't need me anymore? Then who am I? So there is a mindset shift that has to happen as you break through these phases, and we help with that as well.
That's awesome. I remember looking at the board when you drew this out, and you drew the CXO, you drew each one of those in a very specific order. Talk about the typical sequence that you see when you're plugging in a plus one into a company, because I thought that was super unique. And I know there's a methodology behind that.
Yeah, it's not what they normally think. They all think they want to start with a CMO, almost universally, everybody. But the problem is their CGO will usually question, who do you want to be when you grow up? Like, what's your unique value prop? Like all those things we don't need to bring in a marketing person to ask the really basic questions about the company. Based on those things and where they're wanting to go, they usually don't have a handle on their finance. So it reminds me of like somebody saying, I want to fly from Atlanta to LA. It's like, well, hey, can you even read any of the dials or gauges in the cockpit? No. Let's maybe start there. Like, that's a good place to start. So we'll bring in a CFO to get a true state of the union, clean things up, get things a little sexier in case they need to raise some money or if they need a little line of credit, which we can help with, all that stuff. The CFO is usually the one that's like, okay, here's the budget, or here's what we can do, or we could leverage this and borrow against that. And all of a sudden they're like, cool. They don't even know you can do some of these tricks. Remember that 3-dimensional chessboard? So they get all excited and it's like, okay, wait. Then at that point, we'll want to bring in an ops person because the workflows are broken. So now we know state of the union, truth, and can at least figure out budgeting and what our run rate and all that stuff. What is the true burn? Like, who knows what the burn is? Like, once we figure all that out, then ops will come in and we'll say, okay, is the reason you're doing the process this way because you've tested it and it's the most efficient? Or is it because Janice has worked for you for 12 years and that's just how she did it? And nobody's ever questioned Janice. So
Janice.
It drives me bonkers when I see founders who nowadays are all like automation and AI and all this stuff. I'm like, wait, are you automating the way you're currently doing it? Like, maybe you should take a step back and determine if that's the best way to do it. It reminds me of how Atlanta is, where they just paved over the old, horse and buggy trails. It's like, maybe we should be thoughtful about some city planning before we just pave a bunch of weird roads. And that's a business. So ops usually comes second. Third, I would say is usually tech, because by the time we figure out ops, it's like, okay, we can automate a few of these things, which frees us up. It usually saves some money and it frees up some bandwidth. So then by the time tech gets things rolling, they need to bring in marketing because a lot of MarTech goes together. So then marketing is like, how do we get a better fit ICP, and how do we tighten and narrow in on our messaging, which will absolutely determine which channels and which outreach and all the things we need to do. So why are we spray and pray and wasting all this money? And then after marketing has figured all this out, that's when sales comes in, because sales is finally equipped with the right fit ICP, the right hook, the right messaging, hopefully the right offer. But if not, marketing and sales can then overlap and work out offers and test offers. And then everything runs back around to the front to go ask dad, which is the CFO, for more allowance to see if we can get it back over in the marketing or the sales side. And it all starts to run together. That's why you need an entire team. And the only reason that my financial model works, that they can actually afford, is because they're not all up to bat at the same time. They'd never be able to afford that, but they don't need to.
Yeah.
That's so smart. I love it.
It works.
Yeah. What is you've talked about marketing being the place that everybody wants to start.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. What's up with that?
It's because founders, again, they are usually the subject matter expert. So most business owners start the business because they're a good plumber, or they were in roofing and they decided they don't want to work for anybody that's telling them what their schedule is or their limitation on income, or they're a CPA or an architect or fill in the blank. So they usually start it because they're a SME, they're a subject matter expert, or because that's just all they know. They're kind of naturally good at the thing they do, and they don't want a boss, but they really have no idea how to run a business, let alone grow a profitable, stable business, because we're not taught in school.
Yeah.
So
right.
they go and start it. They trial and error, and that first phase is grind. It's hustle, baby. And they're just doing it all, and they're washing the dishes and figuring it all out. And because it's their baby, they have enough in the tank to get them through some frustrations. But the reason that they think they need marketing first, to answer your question, is because they're like, I've sold as much as I can. I've done as much as I can. I'm stuck. I need better leads so we can sell more, because I'm still the subject matter expert. So somebody bring me more people to sell. It doesn't quite work like that.
That's an incredible piece of insight right there, because we see that all the time at Alteza, all the time. And it's either, so if it's not marketing, it's sales. And a lot of times the reason that we're talking to people, they're looking for the same thing that you're talking about. I need leads, or I need somebody to close leads or whatever. But a lot of times business owners don't really understand the difference between marketing and sales. I think sales is marketing and vice versa. But the point is, we see them coming to us for the same thing. And I think one of the learnings that we've had, and you've got to, you've seen some of this as we've been talking about it, is we now have to pump the brakes and ask the business owner, hey, have you done the work in these other areas that you're talking about, Andrea, which is the foundational pieces that are going to support sales and marketing. So I loved how you walked through your sequence, all the things that you talked about. There was a whole lot of stuff that happened there before you got to marketing and sales. But and so what do you think is a couple questions, biggest danger of failing to recognize that and actually kind of putting all your eggs in the marketing or sales basket? What's the biggest danger of that? And then when you think of what you're trying to accomplish at Growth Concierge, what's the biggest transformation you're trying to make for the business owners that work for you or with you?
Okay, so the biggest danger that I see is that they don't have the foundation that you mentioned. They have not done the work. That's why I was shaking my head. I'm like, 99% of them have not put in the work. What they've done is they've grit and hustled and sold, and they're having all these individual conversations where they're probably creating different deal terms and selling different things, chasing squirrels. And now they need somebody else who can come in to do that. But the problem is, because they haven't narrowed in on their ICP, which would then create a better message, and therefore they're not known for anything. Because if you're selling IT, MSP, cybersecurity, something like that, you sound, look, and smell like everyone else in your industry. And if you come out with, but we really care about our clients, it's like, come on, man. Like, that's not going to get you there. So I have people all the time, it's so dangerous, that would say, we're really, really good at fill in the blank, whatever we're good at. We're just not great at getting leads. It's like, well, no, you actually haven't figured out who you need to be selling to. So you're not known for anything. So there's no story. And if you can't sell a problem with some kind of goal and the challenge in between and how you solve that challenge in between to get your person to their goal, you lose. So the challenge that happens with marketing is a lot of companies are trying to sell to everybody, and therefore they're wasting a ton of money. And they get scared. If I say, okay, you're going to sell IT cybersecurity, you'd be better off picking your most profitable, lowest hanging fruit, or maybe the person's a veteran. And so pretty soon you get in front of other veterans, you're talking to veterans, and you say, we are the solution for IT and cybersecurity for veteran-owned companies. And it's frightening to them because they'll say, oh, I could sell to anybody. Why would I say no to everyone else? But if
Yep.
they can get that discipline to do it, then they'll actually become known, and the viral marketing and the messaging and everything will ring the bell. So that's the mistake they make, and that's dangerous. The other dangers on the sales side, and this is why you guys are so great at what you do, because most, I'd say 96 to 98% of founder-led companies that are under 20 million, and a lot that are over, because we see it a lot, they do not build their sales engine, if you can even call it that, around process. They build it around people. They will build their sales engine around a couple of rock stars, a couple of people that are really naturally good salespeople. And then one guy does something well, and then they're like, oh, maybe I should say that. No, build your sales process, test your script. Everybody follows the same thing. And that's why you guys are so good at what you do and so professional, and you systematize the things that they've been giving power to their couple of prima donna rock stars. You take that away from those divas who could leave you like that. And then you can slide a junior person technically in, train them up. And it's the system that's so valuable if we're talking about valuation of the company. Because if you're based on that person, it's like, well, what happens if John gets hit by a bus? You're like, oh, we're screwed. Well, then you don't have a company.
Yeah, that's right.
So those are the dangers, one on marketing and then one on the sales side. And then what are we doing on our side to make that better? What is the transformation that we're seeing?
Yeah.
My entire goal is to give that founder back their freedom, because they started the business because they didn't want a boss, anyone jerking them around, telling them what to do, telling them when they had to work or couldn't take off for a holiday or their daughter's dance recital. And they didn't want a limit on the amount of money they could make. So like, I'm going to go start a business. They didn't realize they were just building themselves a job that actually had them working 80 to 100 hours a week, stressed out in the middle of the night. How do I make payroll? And then they felt like they're a firefighter constantly running in to save the day, because all roads lead to them, because they didn't build it intentionally. They built it as a subject matter expert. So they box themselves into the corner and then go, help, help. And so what we do is we're able to come in and pull them out of the corner and systematize. We get things humming to where the company really can sing. Like, it'll run beautifully with them still involved if they want to be. Or if they're like, I'd love to exit this thing, it's like, well, then we'll work you out of it and we'll make sure you get 5 or 10x what it's worth today. That's sometimes the goal. But even if they want to stay in it, if they're like, I don't really want to retire, I just want more freedom, that's my goal. And if you have more freedom, you can decide, do I want to play or do I want to sell?
Yeah.
So good. Love
So,
that.
Love that.
Andrea, I know there are founders who are listening to this right now, and they're sitting here violently nodding back and forth. They got a neck whiplash over here because they're agreeing with everything that's being said right now, but they don't know that maybe if they're ready for Growth Concierge yet. What is that, let's call it step 0 for where they should start?
That's a really good question, because it's sad if you're trying to sell Ferraris and getting people all excited about a Ferrari and all they can afford is a scooter. It's like, well, that's rude. So we actually built it. I know this is probably not the best analogy. It's kind of like a wedding cake or a layer cake. Like, you've got different layers. So the foundation is our CEO club. And this is for true founders of real companies. And I don't mean to be rude, but I'm meaning no MLM or network marketing distributors, no agents. So like a Northwestern Mutual Insurance, love these guys, but no real estate brokers. These are like real founders running real companies. As long as they've got a team and they're not a startup, then we have the ability through our CEO club to give them access to top experts in a group setting. They're not going to get the one-on-one, it's like joining a really high-end gym. You got the classes, but you do have the access to the experts. You can ask them questions. You can do the red light therapy and the cryotherapy. We've got all the virtual events and the in-person retreats and all the stuff. But if you're like, okay, this is great, but now I'm ready for a personal trainer, then you need a growth concierge level on top of that. That's the next layer of the cake, to torture this analogy. And your chief growth officer, it doesn't mean you still don't get access to all those other things, but they can really work with you one-on-one. They'll meet with some of your leadership team or whoever you have. And just in 1 or 2 hours a month with them and them giving you the homework and being accessible, it'll turn you inside out. Like, these guys are awesome. But then if you're like, yeah, but now I'm getting some momentum, like, let's go. Our most popular is the +1. Because you want a chief growth officer, but you know you need somebody implementing. We actually do all of that for less than the cost of one hire. And the reason we can do it is because 2, 3, 5 hours with some of our guys are like 50 hours with some junior mint trying to pose like they know what they're doing. So quality really does matter. And so there's no junior mints on our team. So what happens then is if they're coming in, I have all kinds of weird slang for
I love it.
Mid-level, that 12-5 level, that they get that whole team and everything. But then if they decide, you know what, I'm crushing this, let's go for it. I really would like to retire by the time my son graduates or whatever. It gives them almost like they realize they can do it now. So now they've got another wind in their sails or whatever. So then they might say, let's go for it. And they bring in a whole team that wants to then, boom, we're going to grow that business in spite of them. Like, it's going to happen. So, and that's very exciting because then once they're ready, you know, they have all their marbles. We don't take any equity and we don't take over control, unlike a PE firm. In fact, we come in behind a lot of PE. We're the muscle, you know, behind a lot of PE. So they get to keep all their marbles. So by the time they're ready to sell, you know, we can help them with that too.
It's awesome.
Beautiful.
That's awesome. Andrea, you're always so gracious with your time with us. Yes. And obviously on this... Well, on this podcast, you've got 3 big fans for sure.
Thanks, guys.
We think the world of you. For people that are like, they're hearing all of this, they're like, this sounds awesome. How do they connect with you? How do they find you? Where do they go?
Okay, well, there's options. So you can obviously go to growthconcierge.org. You know, that's up there. If anybody wants to connect with me, I'm not cagey and weird about that. I mean, like, don't creep me, like, don't stalk me or whatever. But if anybody wants to connect with me genuinely, I'm happy to do that. It's just Andrea B at growthconcierge.org. So, you know, Andrea first name, B for my last name. And you're welcome to email me. And then if somebody really wants to check me out for like media or something, it's andreabeech.me. M-E.
Cool. And that's Beech, E-A.
Yeah.
C-A.
Like the ocean.
Like the actual beach.
Yep.
There you go. Not like the tree. Okay, so as we all know, we end every episode with a toast.
Yes,
and
we do.
We voted a few weeks ago, and King Snake, you are the all-time epic toaster, the Toastmaster.
Permanent Toastmaster. Let's go.
All right, so if you are driving, pull your car over right now. If you are washing your dishes, turn the water off, take the gloves off. Go grab yourself a drink. If you're in the car, don't do it until you get home. And here's what we're saying today. Here's to figuring it out as you go. Solving real problems, even when you don't have all the answers yet. To building something from chaos, learning the hard way, and having the courage to keep going anyway. And to knowing that the real breakthrough comes when you stop doing everything and you start building something that runs without you. Andrea, to you, our team, and everyone listening, cheers.
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 Thank you.
Well done, Drew. He is the Toastmaster.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And that, dear listeners, is a wrap. We hope that you are feeling smarter, faster, and maybe a little less stressed about that ever-growing to-do list, because building a business shouldn't mean building a massive, affordable payroll overnight. And if you're ready to stop worrying about hiring and growing and start leveraging a dream team of experts, you already know where to point your browser, growthconcierge.org. Growth Concierge is here to help you scale smarter, faster, cheaper, with more value and significantly less risk. Huge thanks to Andrea Beech for sharing this incredible model. If you're out there hustling, growing, ready to build a business that doesn't just survive, but thrives, you know where to find us. Like, subscribe, rate, review, tell your friends and founders. Until next time, keep those glasses full. Mine's starting to get a little lower. Keep those growth plans on track. This has been Whiskey is for Closers, a podcast by Alteza. Now go make some money, but damn it, be smart about it. Cheers.
Let's go. Cheers, baby. Whoop.